With nerd and geek culture growing ever more popular for whatever reason, we've seen Hollywood as of late turning to not just comic books anymore, but trying to cash in on Japanese anime and manga. While this is certainly nothing new in Japan itself, with most movies and TV dramas being either tangentially or directly based on a manga or anime of some kind, in the West it's still relatively new, and so far at least, pretty unsuccessful. The attempts to cash in on an untapped niche, while admirable in theory, haven't really worked yet. The latest example of this is the new Netflix original movie, Death Note. Now, I'll be honest here. On its own, I don't think the Death Note movie was really all that bad. I mean, it wasn't anything particularly special either, but compared to other American anime adaptations, it holds its own well enough, I guess. That being said, there were quite a few issues I had with it, especially when compared to the source material. Since they had to condense a long-running expansive manga series into an hour and 40 minutes, obviously some corners had to be cut. It's understandable. But, for example, L coming to the conclusion that Light was Kira happened pretty much out of nowhere. Light's dad, a police chief, gives a press conference and announces that he will track down and catch Kira. His face and name are clearly visible, yet Kira doesn't kill him. So therefore, obviously Light must be Kira, because that's the only reason Light's dad would be alive, right? If this was just a minor plot point, obviously it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but this is the 45-minute mark plot turn that drives the entire rest of the movie. The logic here, and in a few other places, is so flimsy it's kinda ridiculous. In fact, the entire character of L in this movie is just really weird. He's supposed to be a genius detective who was raised in an experiment to foster his high intelligence, a side effect of which is his bizarre mannerisms and antisocial behavior. Maybe the idea was to show that L is so smart he figured out Light was Kira. Now that, in and of itself, is fine. But like I said, the logic he uses here, or at least the logic that the audience is privy to, is laughably absurd. Kira didn't kill Light's dad, so Light must be Kira. I mean, what if Kira was just taking a shower or taking a dump during the press conference and, just happened to miss it? Also, L goes out of his way to mention how he hates guns, and then at the end of the movie he pulls out a gun to kill Light. I'm guessing this is supposed to show us that L is at the end of his rope and willing to do anything to avenge his partner Watari. But again, the movie doesn't really allow enough development of the characters, especially L, in my opinion, to make this meaningful. It just comes across like, I don't like guns. What? Just kidding, yes I do. Speaking of Watari, this is another point where the movie collapses under its own logic. How the Death Note works, we're told, is that you have to write the person's name, picture their face in your mind, and then write how they die. Light uses the book to control Watari to find L's real name, but this doesn't make any sense. There's no way that Watari is either his full name or even his real name, but Light can still control him using the Death Note. By this same logic, shouldn't he be able to do the same to L? Even if writing Watari's name works as intended, if Light wanted to kill L, all he had to do was write that Watari would kill L or shoot him or something, and then 24 hours later, kill himself somehow. Light could still burn the page before Watari's death, and mission accomplished. That being said, all of these are pretty small gripings compared to what I think is the biggest problem with Netflix's Death Note adaptation. And that is the character Light. You see, in the original manga and anime, Light has the quintessential perfect life. He's top of his class, he has a pretty rich, affluent life, he's smart, good-looking kid, people like him. I mean, his life is pretty great. The problem, though, is that he's bored. He doesn't have any stimulation to keep him interested because everything comes pretty easy for him. Now, we find out later that his boredom in the face of an otherwise seemingly perfect life is one of the reasons why Duke gives him the Death Note in the first place. Throughout the story, we watch the tragedy of Light and how he gives up his perfect life for excitement and mental stimulation, and how he and L, who are equals in intelligence and wit, go head-to-head to outsmart each other. But Light and L are always 3 steps ahead of each other at the same time. The entire point of Death Note is that it's a battle of wit and logic between these two characters, and how Light eventually succumbs and laments how his thirst for excitement ended up ruining not just his own life, but the whole world in general. As he says, a little boredom can be a dangerous thing. In the Netflix movie though, Light is basically just your average kid. I mean, he's smart-ish, but altogether an underachiever, kinda nerdy and introverted. His home life is a mess. He gets picked on and tries to get the attention of the pretty cheerleader. I think we've all seen this character before. It's the same character in pretty much every teen movie since forever. When Light gets the Death Note, it's for the purpose of stopping the bully, getting the girl, and feeling powerful for once in his life. Really, it's just the story of Spider-Man or a Chronicle. Instead of a psychological battle between two equals, the fight between Light and L in this movie is pretty much one-sided. Instead of Light being a genius mastermind, now he's just a regular kid who gets in over his head because he wanted to date the cheerleader, I guess. As I said, the movie on its own is enjoyable enough for what it is. But when you think about where it came from and what it could have been, I can't help but feel disappointed. Between this, Ghost in the Shell, Dragon Ball, I mean, maybe cartoons should just stay cartoons.